Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us on this latest episode of Technical Deficit. I probably shouldn't say this on a live stream, but this is one of my favorite shows, simply because we get to nerd out, we get to geek out with the latest technology, make mistakes together, and just find out all the wonderful awesomeness that is MSP world today. So today we're going to be, I see you're already in the chat, my OIT family. Thank you so much for joining us. I see Luke, I see Cliff, I see Jonathan, and of course our esteemed guest, Mr. Kelvin. I'm not going to, for one time, I'm not going to butcher his last name because he has done way too much good for the community. I think he gets a pass today. But one of my favorite people, Mr. Kelvin Tegelaar.
Oh, that was so close. That actually, that one deserves praise. That was really close.
Thank you, brother. How you doing today?
Good, man. Good. Glad to be here.
Cool. So if you're one of the two people left on the planet that don't know Kelvin, I don't know how you haven't seen him on his CyberDrain blogs, which I like to call my CyberDrain blogs, but I let him take the credit for it. He's a Microsoft MVP. In what you get a category for that, right?
Yeah. So cloud and data center management, and yeah, let's call it cloud and data center management.
that works.
The new name is a little bit longer, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like when I got my MCIE, they changed it immediately afterward. When I got my silver cert, they changed it immediately after. I'm like, okay, I'm tired of keeping it up. But
Yeah.
the important part is you are an MVP, as noted by Microsoft and by the MSP community, a fellow mod on our MSP, also an admin on MRU, and frequent contributor to the MS community at large. And if you're not following his blogs at cyberdrain.com, if you're not following him on Twitter, realistically, what are you doing with your MSP? And if that's not enough, if his frequent blogs and speeches and presentations aren't enough, he also made this thing called CIPP or SIP, I guess. And what does that stand for, Kelvin?
The CyberDrain Improved Partner Portal, and it's I named it that because, well, the current partner portal simply sucks and it needed improvement.
It lacks just a little bit. It's either slow or it doesn't load at all, or you have to do 19 clicks to get to something to realize you can't do it with delegated admin. And yeah, it is the bane of the MSP existence, which sucks because 365 and Microsoft portals are a regular daily need for the MSP community. So you made this, and it's not a solo project, even though you've taken the helm of managing this, but there's quite a few regular contributors to this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's I started this on my own just because we'll get into the reasons a little bit later. But immediately after I released it, like the first day, I immediately had a lot of contributors somewhere in the chat right now. I should give a special shout out to Gavin and Red Anthrax in the chat. They were the first two people that immediately jumped in on this project and started helping out.
Yeah, and Gavin Stone of MSP Geek, the UK version, not the US version. Although I'm sure US Gavin Stone has also been using this as well. And this, if you haven't joined MSP Geek, specifically the CIPP channel or Discord, thanks again, guys. I appreciate the Discord bridges. It is nonstop. It is one of the busiest channels. Gavin, correct me on that if I'm wrong, but it's one of the busiest channels, as your CTF is usually one of the busiest channels on Geek. So the improved partner portal, are you keeping track of the revisions at this point? I mean, I know you're constantly putting stuff out.
It's in very rapid development, so it's kind of hard to keep track of exactly what version we're at, because it tends to be a little bit flexible, especially because there's so many contributors that have so many ideas and things just get implemented right now. But we went from version 1.0 to 1.3 already, and I think we're adding 10 features per release, something like that, maybe even 15. And those are all new features, and there's also many bug fixes that we implement each time. There's an active dev channel too, so in case you don't want if you don't want the releases, so the stable version, and you're okay with looking at development stuff, then you can also use the dev channel, which is constantly being updated during the day.
That was my thing. When you release this, it's going on a little over a week at this point, right? When you publicly
A
released
little
it?
over 2 weeks now. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So you released it. I was going to do, I think it was a Friday or something like that, or a Thursday. I was going to do a video on it that Sunday. I was going to do a technical deficit, load it myself. And then I look at the CIPP channel and I realize you guys are nonstop adding stuff and the ideas and the feature requests. And it was nonstop. And I realized the minute I record something on this, it's going to be out of date again. So I figured, as opposed to me talking about it, there you go. Gavin's confirming it's a very fast moving channel. As opposed to me talking about it, I figure I have, the brain that behind this, the
one of the brains
creator,
behind this. Yeah,
one of the
yeah,
brains behind this. Let's give credit where credit's due.
exactly.
But it was definitely your idea, at least. So
Yeah, exactly. It's. I started this mostly because I got really annoyed at a couple of very specific vendors. Let's just say all the vendors in the RMM space right now. Simple as that.
they should have had
They
this years
all
ago. Yeah.
exactly, and I've always been saying like, hey, start looking into this to my current vendors, to vendors that I'm speaking to, at events that I'm speaking. I always told them like, hey, start looking into this because you're starting to lag behind. And it finally came to a place where all of these vendors are so far behind that my annoyance level was too high to let it go. This was spike driven development. I was telling myself I could prove that this can be done in a couple of weeks. And I did. In 3 weekends I spent on the very first release, and from there on, it when I released about 2 weeks ago, it just exploded, and we've been adding to it so rapidly. And vendors have been approaching me about, hey, can we use this? And I've been a bit shy, I guess, about that, because I don't want to give them like, hey, you didn't make any effort for the last 3 years, whatever, and you do want to reap the benefits now. So we're being a bit careful about that.
Yeah, and I want to take a moment to bring this up as well. One of the contributors, Gavin Stone, and his blog is here. I can't find the actual link itself on your blog. Gavin did a great write up on the state of the MSP and the future of it. And MSP Geek has their future cast with Kyle Spooner. But he did a really good write-up on where he sees the deficits are and where MSPs should be going. And that wasn't even recent. That was, at least I want to say, 6-7 months ago, maybe. Yeah, Gavin saying, I know that guy. But he mentioned something here too, which is something I talked about 2 years ago. I don't want to get into products specifically, but I talked about when we were looking at moving off RMM. Well, that's hard to say. We started moving all the scripts to just pure PowerShell scripts, stuff that could be agnostic to whatever platform. And that's one of the things I think I love about CIPP today, that you got it done fast, you got it done with minimal resources, you got it done product agnostic. It doesn't have to be, it's not tied into any RMM PSA platform. It is simple. And you made it as close to a single click install as humanly possible, which is no small feat in itself.
Yeah.
So yeah. So just real quick housekeeping stuff for those of you in the chat. This is live Q&A. So if you have questions, I know Kelvin's been inundated with questions. Go ahead and ask him as you go along. Share whatever. If you have any wins or any challenges, share them in there too. We're not going to take feature requests on here. Kelvin has no small list of feature requests. He actually put out a series of tweets about this. Not quite one click, but yes, read the manual.
The most important thing, it's like MSPs don't like reading documentation. For this, you have to read the documentation. We've tried to make it as clear as possible, saying like, hey, start here, do this, and this, and then do this, and this. And we still got a lot of people in the MSP Geek channel saying, hey, it's not working. And then we ask, did you do these steps? And from there on, yeah, people get it working. But it's important to read the documentation.
I love that when somebody asks a question, and I don't want to call out any other MSP Geek admins, but when Mendy's asking questions, the answer is it's in the docs.
It's in the docs.
So I'll bust Mendy's chops a little bit. And yes, thank you, Joe. I appreciate. I got my CyberDrain gear. Very proud of that. I still need to get a pillow for the pillowcase. So without much further ado, and yes, this is recorded. It's live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. We're starting to do that too immediately after this. So Kelvin, you want to walk us through going through this install process, some of the thoughts as you were doing these things?
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Absolutely. Let me just share my screen so everyone can at least follow. Yes, share my screen, share a specific window, because otherwise my resolution will be too high for most people.
Share the I'll share the GitHub links and Gavin's blog links in the chat
so
too.
I'm going to ask the most annoying question that you can ask since COVID. Can you see my screen?
It's a little tight. If you could zoom in a little bit, it would be good. Yeah, there you go.
Perfect.
That's good.
Okay. So let's just jump into the documentation first, which is also probably a little bit too small. So let's zoom in there. On the GitHub page, you immediately have the documentation, and you can actually find that link inside of the first informational place that you end up when you come to the GitHub page. So in here, you have the document installation.md, and this is exactly what we're talking about. We have this little list of things you need to have beforehand. You need to have the secure application model. You need to execute a specific script. So it's not quite a single click, but it's close enough. The actual application installs with one click, but you have to make sure to execute some PowerShell scripts beforehand so you can get access to the portal. And then you have to share out a bunch of permissions, and we're actually trying to decrease this list a little bit, or at least going to split it into, if you want read-only, do this. If you want read and write, do this, because some of these are obviously duplicates. If you look at application read-all, if you have application read-write all, you don't need read-all. You just have read-write, read-write. So yeah, that's a giant list of things, and you'll need to do a couple of things in GitHub before you get started, which are all very straightforward. It's all little clickable links, and you just have to press the buttons that you see. After all of that, you can click the Deploy to Azure button, enter all the information you've collected previously, and from there on, you can start simply deploying the entire application. When you deploy the application, it's very important that you do this little piece that's somewhere in the documentation. The first 20 minutes in the application can be slow, not respond, that kind of stuff. We can't make that any faster, just don't.
What's the point of being a Microsoft MVP if you can't speed up Azure for us? Come on, man.
Yeah, exactly. I can't speed up Azure. I'm sorry about that. So yeah, after you've deployed this, I mean, this all looks like a lot of code, but it's actually just executing a couple of scripts, and you make sure that you enter the correct information. That's all. From there on, you actually end up at this place, and this is the CIPP's first page landing page. And from there on, you can actually decide what you're going to do from then on. In the side menu, you can choose the specific topics you want to manage, like identity management. You want to get some reporting about identities, or tenants, or endpoints, or Teams and SharePoint. So all of this list is just beautifully there, and you can click on each link to get what you want. This currently is my local development environment, which doesn't run securely. It doesn't run on SSL. But when you do have it uploaded on Azure, it automatically is encrypted, uses your Azure AD logon, and all that kind of stuff. So that's a giant benefit. It immediately integrates directly into your existing AD environment. That means you can give it access. That means you can do all that kind of cool stuff to make sure that your users are able to use the application without problems. So let me just show you guys some features, and I think that most of the MSPs here already know that, like, okay, managing users in M365 when you have to jump between tenants is very slow. And I have two of my test tenants here, which is my security tenant, always aware, and my Smile network tenant, which is an anagram for Lime Networks. So I'll click on Smile Network, and then I can immediately start administering users. And just imagine that I have one user. For example, I have Simon Twerkel, another anagram for Lime Networks, and I click on Convert to Shared Mailbox. Yes. I immediately start the process in the background for converting a mailbox to or a user to a shared mailbox. Normally speaking, to do this, you'd first have to jump into the global admin of that specific tenant. Then you have to go click about 14 times in the portal to get to the users list. Then you have to click on the user, jump to Exchange, and then click on Convert to Shared Mailbox. So instead of that 14 clicks, 2 logons, that kind of stuff, we have a simple 1 click, actually 2 clicks because you also have to confirm it. And you convert a mailbox to a shared mailbox. And that's the power of CIPP. We've designed this with the MSP workflow in mind. So that's something that we're also very much talking about inside of MSP Geek. We only want to implement what is an MSP workflow. We only want to make sure that we think about, hey, how do people do specific things? And a lot of the stuff like user management is done like, for example, you want to edit a user and you only want to edit specific things. In case you do this in the Microsoft portal, you don't get to edit these all in one page. You get these first 4, and then you have to go to the next page, and then you get the user's location and the licenses, and then you have to go to the next page, or you have to go to the Exchange admin console to add the aliases. So there's a lot of build-up and too many layers, really too many layers for standard Microsoft administration. So we tried simplifying that as much as possible. And the entire thing about it is also speed. One thing that we focus on is we want that tenant switching like this. We want that to be near instantaneous. We want to make sure that when a user is using the application, they are able to just do the things they want fast, not have to log in again or all that kind of stuff. That's super annoying. And that's also one of the things that was the driving force behind creating the entire application. A lot of RMM vendors are looking too deep into this and are not looking at the workflow of MSPs. They are using market research focused on enterprise organizations, and MSPs no longer work like enterprise organizations. They might have at one point in the past because it was efficient. But with the evolving of cloud only and with the evolving of the Microsoft 365 offering for MSPs, it became so much different than managing just an enterprise that always has a local AD, that always has on-site services. So that's also we're focused on very modern management inside of CIPP. And I've noticed I've been rattling.
That's a challenge too, right? Because you have, a lot of these RMM, and I don't want to call out anybody in particular because, in my opinion, they're all guilty of this.
Absolutely, but there's not a single one that does not. Yeah.
Right. And so they all have their product managers, and some are more active in the community and talking and that kind of stuff. But I've yet to see any of these RMM companies sit down at scale and say, okay, let's talk workflow. Let's see how you guys do this. How do you manage day to day? And there's enough people out there that are willing to share the information. There's no excuse for it. But they keep going back to those old school methodologies of doing market research and doing, polls, when you have these giant communities saying, just watch us work, just ask us how we do things.
Exactly.
I know plenty of MSPs willing to share sanitized, workflows and ticket data to get a better product that'll benefit all.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, one of the other things that's of course is super important for MSPs is like we said, that workflow stuff, but also standardization. I mean, MSPs exist by the grace of standards. It's as simple as that. There's no reason to be an MSP if you don't apply standardization anywhere. One of the cool things that we've made with CIPP is allowing you to apply a specific set of standards to all of your tenants. So you can just click on, for example, 2 tenants in this case. This is my demo environment. And I say, I want to enable all of these standards. And if you do that, you get you can enable the unified audit log for everyone. You are able to enable security defaults, like this entire list. And we're evolving this list rapidly, where we've just added enable per user MFA for all users because a specific MSP requested that. So that kind of stuff is super powerful because, as you can see, these standards will be applied every 3 hours on a repeated schedule. That means if one of your employees by mistake, or if a co-managed client changes the setting to the incorrect one, it'll automatically be reset, which is super powerful. We actually have an analysis that we are able to run on tenants. Unfortunately, I do not have any data on that right now. But even here, you get to see exactly what a client has enabled and not. And you can show them like, hey, you're missing some security features that we consider best practices.
We're getting away from initial configuration only, which a lot of scripts do already, to now we're maintaining a desired configuration standard,
Yeah,
and maintaining it in perpetuity because you're reapplying over and over again.
yeah,
I,
exactly.
that's awesome. It's DSC for for 365. I love it.
It is. It's a slightly different approach because we don't monitor if a specific thing changes. We just say we reapply no matter what,
Mhm.
and that is also that gives us some more flexibility in some places. But a lot of these things are able to help MSPs that are struggling with applying those standards, that are struggling with telling their clients like, "Hey, you need to start doing this because otherwise." You're missing out on specific things. Like, for example, one of them is the unified audit log enablement. If you don't have it enabled, then a lot of the logs simply don't stream there, and you'll have a hard time finding if a mailbox has been hacked or all that kind of stuff. If you are able to say just to all your clients, hey, we make sure that thing is enabled, that is a super huge value add. And instead of just having to check that constantly yourself, it's one of the things that I think MSPs should expose more to their clients, like, hey, we're doing this for you. We're changing these settings. Okay, so yeah, like I said, we also have a lot of reports. For example, if I want to look at the MFA report for a specific tenant, I can also see like, okay, hey, some users have MFA enforced here. A lot of them have it disabled. No one has security defaults. No one has conditional access. But if I go to another tenant, then I can see that they have per user MFA or conditional MFA registered. And I think that Gavin sent a link to the best practices, how it looks populated. I'm not sure
I
where.
don't. Gavin, do me a favor. DM me on Geek with a link. I think YouTube kills links when they're put in by people in
Yeah,
chat.
exactly.
But if you send me the link in Geek, I'll put it up.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, you can see like, hey, this account is enabled and it has enforced or enabled multi-factor authentication. So that's actually pretty cool to just see how that works. There's a lot of reporting and powerful stuff in there, but I think that most MSPs should also start looking into this part, and that's the endpoint management section. This actually allows you to deploy Intune policies and applications across all your tenants instantly. So let me just grab a tenant that has an Intune license because my
While you're doing that, let me put up the image Gavin sent me real quick.
yeah, cool.
And yeah, Gavin said this is what it looks like when the best practice analyzer is populated. So, like I said, guys, this is moving really, really, really quick. You just changed a bunch of API endpoints to adhere to new standards as far as the naming. I mean, it's like nonstop changes. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah,
So,
and we well, at least I myself like that rapid development. I like
yeah.
making sure that features that people are requesting actually get into the
Yep.
product. And of course, at one point you'll reach that adulthood where you can't say like, okay, I can implement this feature just willy-nilly. But it takes a lot of time to just make sure that you get the right development environment for everyone. And then yeah, I want to make sure that we keep the pace high at least.
I mean, and I know this wasn't, or maybe it was your goal, but I look at this and then I go back to, and I will call them out by name. And again, it's not any one company is that we're not singling out a single company. They're all doing it wrong, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
But you're taking a small group of people that have put this together in a matter of weeks. We're not talking months. We're not talking years. Yes, Gavin Stone's been doing this a really long time. Red Anthrax has been doing this a really long time. Kelvin's not only been doing this, but posting. Well, actually, Gavin has too. Posting on his blog. Same thing with Daniel Bullock. You guys, everybody's posting on their blogs. They're sharing their best practices. So it's not like the resources weren't there. And some companies have come in and say, okay, we're taking these blogs and we're making it a commercial product. But even they took more than a year to get this done. Kelvin and group got this done in a matter of weeks. So if you're one of those big RMM companies, one of the big 4 or 8 or whatever it is, and you have 50, 100, 200 devs working on the stuff, you got no excuse. You have absolutely no excuse at this point. It's not
Exactly.
only a need that's there, but Gavin and Kelvin and Daniel and et al have sat there and said, this is what we need. because I'm looking at this stuff, and every time you post a new page or post a new workflow, I'm like, I know that CyberDrain blog. I've seen that on Kevin's blog. Like, the information's there. Even the
Yeah,
setup,
exactly.
setting up
Exactly.
secure application model and stuff for the application, and setting the permissions. You've covered all of this in previous blogs. So,
Yeah,
but
that's one of the things that I also really like. I can integrate all the PowerShell stuff that people get scared of and give it a nice little interface. And people are a lot less apprehensive when they can click around in an interface than execute a script. So this is a beautiful way to just show everyone, like, this is how you can do modern management. So like the application list for example, here you can just say, like, I have a specific application, 7-zip right here, and I want to apply that globally. I want to apply it to all devices and all users. Instead of having to click in the Intune portal, wait for 15 minutes, I can just click here, say yes, poof, it's done. It's assigned. It's assigned to all devices and all users, but also adding applications, which often is like super annoying to do. You have to create your own Intune Win package. You have to make sure that the Intune Win package stays up to date. Instead of just saying, like, I'm going to create an Intune Win package for you, we created the Add Shoko app feature. So if I want these two tenants, or at least let's say my testing tenant, Smile Network, I want it to have Firefox. I just say Firefox. I call it Firefox latest for the portal. Latest, yeah, that's fine. Blah blah. If I want to, I could enter a custom repository URL, so I can also use my own chocolatey packages.
This is a joke for anybody that saw this in the chat. I'd laugh to see Kelvin brought out by anybody, but no, it's just a joke. Just needed to call that out there. And for anybody, if Choco, what he's referring to is chocolatey, chocolatey, whatever.
Yeah.
However you want to say it. I put the link in the chat. Most MSPs at this point, they're using Ninite or chocolatey or whatever.
Exactly.
So,
and at the moment you just click apply here, poof. Well, in my case, I get an internal server error because my local development environment is not connected to that API on purpose. I don't want to break stuff. It would end up at the list applications immediately. And from there on, you would have a new application added to a specific tenant. And that's the same for Autopilot. Adding devices, normally you have to go to a specific Microsoft portal. You have to upload the CSV. I've also made the option to upload the CSV. But here we also just added like super simple stuff that Microsoft hasn't thought about. A way to enter the serial numbers and device models instead of just having an upload button. So if I click next right now, it'll just say, hey, you have the wrong, your serial number is incorrect, bad request. So all of this stuff is just existing APIs and existing stuff in the world of the Microsoft 365 management, but just applied much more to the workflow of MSPs. Same for profiles or status pages or policies. Like, I'm able to just say, I want to add a specific policy to this tenant. And from there on, here you can see my default configuration profile, administrative template is applied. I could also just say, I want to add a new policy there and actually enter the raw information I get from the Microsoft portal. Only have to configure it once, and then apply that to all my tenants at once instead of one by one logging into them and all that kind of stuff. So that's one of the things that I really love about this application. I think there's two different tracks, I guess. Gavin is very focused on the reporting side of it, and I'm very focused on the application side of it. So like applying standards and applying new definitions and making sure my tenants are in a specific state. And Gavin is very much focused on helping with reporting those specific states. So we have this beautiful synergy, really.
And that's what it's all about, right? Getting the knowledge shared from the MSP community and applying it to this product. I think it's phenomenal. And I hate to call it a product because you're not selling it. I mean, it's completely sponsorware, and we are a proud sponsor of pretty much anything Kelvin does. But if you're using it, welcome to contribute on the GitHub. He's not asking for money from anybody, just the opposite. He gives it out like he does everything for free. If you want to support him, as I think everybody should, please go support them. You do have a hosted option though, right? Where you manage it.
Yeah, well, hosted option, because the application is sponsorware, and let me just go back to the GitHub page to explain how the sponsorware structure works, because it's always a little bit weird when I'm talking about that. Because I'm very much about, okay, I'm a businessman. It's as simple as that. I am a co-owner of a very successful MSP, I like to say. And so I focus on business, and giving things away for free is not a part of doing regular business. So I did want to do this for the community. I didn't want to create yet another application that overpromises and underdelivers. So what I've done is I have made the project free, but I have a sponsorware component, and that sponsorware component is both for vendors and for users of the product. If a user wants the product, you can become a sponsor, and I can host CIPP for you. I'll also make sure you'll always have the latest release. You'll also get a specific dev release and that kind of stuff. That little bit of money a month makes sure that I am able to, for example, pay for design of the CIPP pages. I'm able to pay specific vendors. I'm able to my co-contributors. I'm able to help them see or help them financially somehow, or at least give them a little bit of benefit from contributing to an open source project. I've also added a company sponsor thing, which OITVOIP is the first sponsor for, and they get logo usage, the possibility of having their logo in the application, that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's completely free. But it's not that I have zero benefits. I want people to know that, of course, I have some skin in the game. Of course, I make some money of it. It's not covering anything really, because the amount of time and support I have to put in there is just, yeah, the scales have been tipped very much to the wrong side of that. But yeah, I'm able to do this for free thanks to sponsors.
But it holds you accountable, so that when that day comes where you're struggling, because it's going to happen. It happens with all and any passion projects, which is very much what this is, right? It happens with those projects where you get a little bit tired, especially somebody like you, where you have 14 billion things going on. Exactly. It does push you, because you do have those sponsors saying, okay, we're still putting up money every month. It drives you a little bit. Okay, no, I still have an accountability to keep developing this. It's a two-sided approach, and Kelvin's way too nice to do it, but I'll call it out. Dado, Enable, ConnectWise, SolarWinds, whatever, Ninja, even though I love my friends at Ninja. You guys drop the ball here, and don't try to recreate this. Don't try to, spend, because it's going to take you guys years to get even close to what's being done. Just pony up and sponsor them. I mean, how hard is that? That is the cheapest, fastest way you're going to be able to take care of your MSP clients and partners. Just sponsor this, and I'll throw down the gauntlet on the vendor side. So,
thank you.
All right.
It's like I said, I always find it a little bit awkward to talk about this, because I mean, of course, there's money to be made somewhere, but I didn't make this project to make money. That's pretty much what it amounts to for me.
Well, I think at this point, if everybody in Geek threw in $50 a month, we'd still be probably 10 years behind paying you what you're owed between CyberDrain and CTFs and everything else. So it's a very small ask, if even an ask at all. And yeah, I mean, and also whatchamacallit, that's actually that's a good point. If the day ever comes where you need to focus on something else, if there's sufficient revenue coming in, you can keep assigning people to this to keep helping.
Exactly. That's pretty much what it amounts to. Yeah. I've shown you most of the product, and I'm pretty sure that there's people in the chat that have already used the product. If you haven't used the product at all yet, and if I haven't interested you into the project yet, I've done something wrong during my presentation or during this demo. I do hope that everyone wants to jump into this. It's if you feel like you have worries about something in the product, or about authentication, or about security, or about anything like that, please talk to us in MSP Geek, because I love hearing what people think about it, but I also love hearing the negatives, because I can only grow the project can only grow if we hear people being negative about it. One of the worries about some people was security. We've made a complete security policy. If you currently go to the GitHub page and click on security, you can click on our security policy and you can actually see that, hey, there's specific versions that are supported. You can report a vulnerability, and there's actually an open bounty. You will get a $50 reward if you find a major bug in the product. And that is $50 that I'll take right out of my pocket and give you because I want this to succeed. So worries, security concerns, all that kind of stuff, please throw them at me. Please. I love hearing it, no matter what the worry is.
Yeah, and that's really the difference of an MSP doing this versus I hate calling out a vendor because I completely acknowledge that I am one today, but the MSP looks at security first. It's saying we're building this, we have a security policy from day one or month one, and you actually went out and asked some people I hold in very high esteem, to get their feedback on your security policy. So I appreciate that.
It's I just want to make sure that we're doing this right, and that's what's most important to me. And like you said, it's not one vendor, it's all of the vendors in our entire space. It's RMM vendors, it's PSA vendors. There's even vendors that specifically are active in this market that specialize in only showing or only focused on Microsoft 365 management. We all know them, and they all drop the ball too. They don't adhere to our workflows, and they don't think about how MSPs work. It's not just that. It's also most of them price themselves out of the market, asking for, like, I think one of them is at $250 per tenant per month perpetually. Or another one that I know of is saying, like, we want X% of your Office 365 license revenue. Yeah, that's not going to work, people. That's just not realistic.
No, it's not. And that's the danger of coming up with something. It's sad to say because 365 is not new, Azure is not new, but coming up with something new in the space is these vendors are looking at the billing models first. And I get it. Like you said, you have to be able to support something. I'm always very cautious of something that comes out and is 100% free. Something has to be able to support it or it's going to die off eventually. But these vendors that come in and are looking at how are we going to make money first, and it's not a wrong approach. I'm not trying to fault that, but they're throwing spaghetti at a wall. They're trying to figure out how we're going to do it, and not saying, is it worth $250 a month, or is it worth X amount per tenant? And actually that brings me back to, I laugh a little bit because one of your I know one of the ideas that you're going to go with later on is to present this, create an API, a public facing API for CIPP, right? And it makes me laugh a little bit because everything you've built is based on, for the most part, I know it's not 100%, but for the most part, built on publicly accessible graph APIs, right? That's the idea. And a lot of the blogs, like we said, can access those same APIs to accomplish a lot of the functions that you've packaged and made it pretty. And it seems that providing a public API to do the things that we could do via API before is kind of coming full circle for the people that didn't want to do the API thing. I get it, because I have to assume you're going to aggregate the APIs so you can do single call stuff to accomplish a lot more than via.
Exactly. So it's an API for the APIs, and I understand how silly that is, but some people really want to have an API for dummies, I guess. I mean, I don't mean that negatively, but a simpler version of the API that suits their workflow than just directly interfacing to that specific API.
It's not silly. It's anybody that's worked with APIs know, even from the same vendor, Microsoft's is absolutely guilty of this. You can have multiple API endpoints from the same vendor and get back different data formats from, I don't know why I have this dysnomia today, but different data formats from the same vendor, or they can provide different returns or expect different formats sending to them, and things can change. And so it makes it extremely difficult when you're trying to normalize the data. That is a major component of building any application. You have to normalize the data so you can present it to whatever front end you're doing. So to be able to aggregate all of that within CIPP, so it's making it easier to hit one endpoint versus 100 endpoints, or not have to iterate through, in a for while loop or whatever across all your customers, being able to hit CIPP and easier calls. There's a ton of value to that. in my opinion.
Absolutely. So just one more thing I wanted to show was I always like telling people like how many users do we have, and that's something that's public too. That's something you can view directly on GitHub. You can go to the insights page on our CIPP and click on network, and you'll see how many people forked it and how many people actually started using it in production. If they have a line that diverges from the main white line, that actually means that person has deployed their CIPP portal. So currently there's 146 forks and 132 active users. So there's 132 people that actively have deployed it to Azure.
In roughly 2 weeks and change.
In roughly 2 weeks' time, yeah. And that's even a little bit on the low side because you are able to fork this repository privately and then make it invisible because you want your privacy. Of course, that's also a possibility.
Yeah, if you have paid GitHub, that's something I found out the other day because we do have paid for our own stuff. But if you have the free version of GitHub, anything you fork is public by default. So just a little gotcha in there. Quick question: do I like Star Wars at all? No, I don't know. I don't watch Star Trek Wars Enterprise. No, I'm kidding.
That was hard to say.
Right, it was tough. That hurt me a little bit. I have my Darksaber next to me. All my favorite things. I have my Blind Lime next to me that TapTech printed for me.
Yeah,
and I have my there you go. And I have my Cloudy McCloudy. So all my favorite things next to me. So yeah, I mean, so guys, what do you think? I mean, how many of you are using this? I saw some familiar names in the network tab, including TapTech actually. You know, but are you guys using it? If you're not using it, why aren't you using it? Right. I know a lot of this stuff can seem scary at first. I'm the first person to admit that there were a lot of Kelvin scripts on CyberDrain originally, setting up SAM applications, setting up the credentials, figuring out how to run, even though he has plugs for everything, but figuring out how to run Azure functions and all that stuff, which is a little bit daunting at first. But the pain that goes away after setting this stuff up is so much better. And this is probably the easiest thing I've seen you ever blog on as far as deployment.
I mean, yeah, that is, I think, the simplest one, or at least the one that is most accessible to everyone, because it eventually gives a web interface instead of just having scripts or that kind of stuff. It looks a lot less daunting when you have a web interface instead of just code in front of you.
Absolutely. And, you know, those of you using it, ask your techs. I mean, this is built by an MSP. Ask your techs, you know, how much time it saves. I mean, you can look at that on we're all logging time anyway, right? You can look at that in your own PSAs and see, okay, when we're doing these functions, deploying these new tenants, assigning these security standards, deploying MFA, all the stuff we know you're all doing, right, guys? You know, how much time does it take versus doing it here and making sure that that state is kept? You know, via reapplying. The venerable Luke Whitelock also been with us on Technical Deficit a few times. Going live with it on the next merge where there's some better permissions. You want to talk about the permission changes you guys are affecting?
So right now we have one permission level, and that is simply you are a user and you can do everything. And that, of course, in most MSPs, or at least in some MSPs, you can't have one simple user level. So what we've decided on is to create 3 new user levels. One is a read-only user. The second is an editor user, so you are able to edit users and create new things and that kind of stuff. And an administrator who's able to add excluded tenants and add specific standards and that kind of stuff. So you can just make sure, or at least you can make sure that people can't screw things up on accident because they don't have the permissions to. And we'll make sure that those are a little bit more leveled out. I know my camera's frozen. I was trying to fix it secretly while messing with the buttons here. Oh, I actually don't. Ray, you're muted.
Yeah, it helps if I unmute myself, right? Every episode, I got to be muted at least once.
Yeah.
So there you go. Gavin says, 1 speed, 1 gear, go. for the evaluating it, but Kelvin's accent reminds me of a Bond villain, so I'm just being a bit cautious. Yeah, I mean, he's absolutely a Bond villain, especially when he started growing the COVID beard.
I am loving my beard. People, look at how awesome that beard is.
Yeah, like everything else Kelvin did, the beard came out fantastic. The camera should be good now. I see Kelvin moving around and dancing. He did a little dance just now. If you haven't seen it, if you missed it, too bad. But yeah, he could be in the John right now and we wouldn't know. That's standard for COVID. I mean, that's standard for the new norm, right? Do the job from wherever and just don't mention anything.
Exactly.
Just missing a cat to stroke. We'll get you. Actually, one of our newest family members to join the team, she has a Sphinx cat, which absolutely looks like a Bond villain cat. Like,
Oh my
so
God, I need a cat.
yeah, well, if we can get you to IT Nation, if they'll let you export out of Europe and into the US, we'll get you to one of these shows.
Oh my
And
God.
I'll bring the cat. So what other questions do you guys have? We got about 9 minutes to go. What other questions you guys have? What do you want to see? I know we're not taking feature. You have and actually the feature request is not a bad thing to bring up. What is the official method for requesting features on CIPP?
Sorry, could you repeat the question? I was a
What
little bit
is
distracted with chat.
Yeah, no problem. What is the official method for requesting features on CIPP?
So first, you'll have to be a sponsor of at least the maximum sponsor level. No, of course, that's just a joke. I mean, please don't think you have to sponsor just to do a feature request. You can request features by clicking on the Issues tab right here. And if you click on it and click on New Issue, you actually get a choice between a bug report or a feature request. If you click Get Started, from there on, there's all the info that we ask for. A lot of people have started including either scripts they use to apply specific things or screenshots of how they imagine it to be. That's perfect because that helps us in envisioning specifically what workflow you're trying to achieve and how you want to make sure that works. So yeah, just use the issues page. Also, if you find a bug, like an interface bug, or something is a little bit off, or something isn't working like you expect it to, just make a bug. There's a chance that we might mark it as needs more info, or as some of them, there might be a won't fix or not a bug, especially if it's outside of the scope of the project. For example, the issue is with, oh, you forgot to give a specific permission, then we'll mark it as not a bug and just point you towards the documentation.
Yeah, and before anybody asks, you cannot manage your own tenant currently.
Yeah.
This was by design. This was one of my questions, but I figure if I'm asking, somebody else is going to ask too at some point. Actually, I've seen it asked at least once on Geek, and that is by design for security's sake. The idea is too much. You can't figure out, and I understand that you can't figure out a good way to do it without giving away too much of the house, right? Security wise, so. Just in case anybody comes across that is read the docs. That's expected behavior.
Exactly.
So, all right. So I think we hit all the questions and everything. I hope to see at least that number doubled within a week of people that have forked this off and are using it. And once again, vendors out there, I know at least 2 vendors I've seen in the chat talking. Go sponsor. I will hit you up privately and tell you to go sponsor. So anyway, with that, Kelvin, what else do you have going on, man? What do you have coming up?
Lots. There's, of course, new blogs still coming weekly. I have decreased the load on that a little bit, so I'm not doing bi-weekly blogs, but just weekly now. And there is a CTF coming very soon. I am not able to say the specific date yet. The team, Gavin, Luke, and myself are still figuring that out, and we'll get back to you all in the coming weeks.
I know for a fact here. I wonder if I can crowdsource some money to have the Huntress folks take a blast at it or something. Mostly just security is my concern. The code is public. I mean, it couldn't be. It's if you have the resources, do it. I can say for a fact, I know for a fact, at least the Huntress folks, I'm not going to speak on their behalf, of course, but
I have had talk with Kyle. I've had their team actually look at the specific at the product itself. I've had some of their help by Chris Bennett, one of the founders of Huntress, saying like, hey, if you use this and this, you can't go wrong, and that kind of stuff. So I have had them give it a glossy review. If you want to pay for the exact or for a code pen test or anything like that, hey, feel free. I'd love that. I'd love someone to pick apart the code and say, you shouldn't do this, you should do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, there's nothing public. It's out of scope. It was more a friend request. Can you take a
Yeah.
look? That kind of professional courtesy among the networking. But yeah, so we're not speaking on behalf of the company, just specific people within the company have
Exactly.
looked.
Exactly.
Thank you, Cliff. Thank you, OIT family, for being part of this. Thank you, Kelvin, for taking your time. I know you have very, very precious seconds getting this done, and it's 8 o'clock your time.
It's 7 because we went to DST.
Oh, you have DST. I forgot.
Brilliant.
So it's not too bad. Not like Tech Bar when you went till 6 in the morning with us.
That was a good memory.
We'll do that again sometime. But thank you, OIT fam. Before I let you go, Simon, what do we have coming up?
Yeah, so we do have a couple events coming up in the next couple of weeks. Our team is actually in Las Vegas right now. Sean, Matt, and a couple other guys are in the Channel Partners Expo. So if you have anyone from your team or yourself, if you're in Vegas, come visit us at booth 371. We're also with Trainer Troops, so you can take a picture with one of the cool service dogs that they have. Next week, we're going to be at IT Nation Connect 2021 in Orlando, Florida. And then we're also going to be doing on Thursday the Tech Bar Podcast Live with the MSP Geek team. We're going to have a meetup. Again, that's at IT Nation on the 11th. And then the following week on the 17th, we have a Partner First webinar with one of our previous guests from the Tech Bar, Aaron Bolton, Develop Your People to Keep Your People. And then on the 24th, we have another Partner First webinar featuring Lifecycle Insights. They're launching an MSP customer success platform. More details to come this week.
Actually, we're doing the live launch at IT Nation. Secret. We're doing a live secret launch at IT Nation. We're going to try to stream it live from there. And the MSP Geek Tech Bar, that will be ConnectWise. Jason McGee, Kyle Jackson, Corey have been very, very kind to get us a private room for us. We will post that out on social. Hit us up if you're going to be at IT Nation. But from 5:45 to 6:45 p.m. on Thursday, we're going to do a live stream of the Tech Bar from IT Nation, and we have a space set up for a live audience, which will be pretty awesome. And of course, we will have plenty of liquor because that's how we do. So, but with that, Kelvin, thank you so much. OIT family, thank you. We appreciate you. We will see you on the next one.
Awesome.